Okay, I've seen Avatar: The Way of Water, and there is a lot to talk about with this movie. First off, there is a lot to enjoy about this movie, and I can understand why a lot of people are going to like it. A lot has been said about like the visuals of this movie, but even more so than that, I think James Cameron is really excellent at directing action sequences. Like beat for beat, it just keeps you invested, and they were thrilling to watch. That said, for me personally, the downsides of this movie, both thematically and narratively, far outweigh the positives. When the first Avatar came out, like, it truly was a different time. The conversation about cultural appropriation was just not really in the mainstream. And maybe I was too optimistic, but I really thought that, more than a decade later, they would at least try to, course correct the strong white savior narrative and the culturally exploitative aspects of this movie, which there are many. But it felt like this movie, like, doubled down. Not only is Jake Sully the consummate white savior in the original and in this one, but they gave him a daughter that is like born of an avatar mysteriously. And she is seemingly going to become like a messiah of the people. Like she has a unique connection to their god, like Erwa, I think it's called. Like Avatar: The Way of Water, 2 white saviors for the price of 1. And while I think that the world building of this franchise does have a lot of potential and is very interesting and cool, even if it does have some flaws, like for example, the GI avatars have tattoos. That's part of their genetic makeup. Seems like a slip. I just think if you're going to tell an entire epic saga about colonialism and the extermination of an indigenous people, and you're coming at it from an exclusively white perspective, that's not great. I mean, if you compare this movie to Prey, which came out earlier this year, from director and writer Dan Trachtenberg, who is also a white man, like there are noticeable difference in the way like the portrayal of indigenous people is handled. And I think that's because Dan Trachtenberg realized that if he wanted to tell that story, he couldn't do it alone. And so there were entire teams of Comanche tribe members and scholars that were dedicated to making the representation authentic and true. And not only that, but making sure the entire cast was almost entirely indigenous. And obviously I understand that the Na'vi are not a real indigenous people, but we can't ignore the real world parallels in what the story is trying to say. And furthermore, the sexualization of the female characters feels very blatant, which is a particular issue with the representation of indigenous women in media. And James Cameron himself has talked about how Neytiri was designed to be attractive. Like, we know that they're meant to be sexually attractive, and these characters are essentially nude on screen the entire time. And this movie introduced like prepubescent girl characters with a lot of focus on their body. Made me a little uncomfortable. Now, this movie is unquestionably visually stunning. My big issue with that is that this is coming at a time of peak exploitation of VFX workers. VFX workers who are underpaid, overworked, and just being taken advantage of left and right. And despite all of that, despite how much praise everyone heaps on the visuals of this movie, the conversation is never about the actual VFX professionals that pushed the industry to this incredible place. They're not getting fair financial compensation, and they're certainly being left out of the credit conversations. And that was also my biggest issue with the first one, which came out when I was in film school studying animation and VFX. I do have a lot to say about this movie from a story perspective too, and I'll make a second video on that.